Welcome to the Spirituality Now podcast. I am your host, Yvonne de la Flor, and today I have a really precious guest, a really creative, talented, gifted, and I'm going to say divine, connected to the divine musician, composer, and beautiful, extraordinary singer. She's known as her stage name or her professional name as Zola Jesus. Her name is Nika. And Zola Jesus is the stage name of Nika, Russian American singer songwriter. Her last name is Rosa Danilova. She was born on April 11 in Phoenix, for those of you who are into astrology and all of that. Her music style combines electronic, industrial, classical, gothic, and experimental rock influences. And also, very soon, which is her background, is opera. Nika was raised in Merrill, Wisconsin, on over 100 acres of forest. She now continues to live in the forest. Nika started singing very early on, buying voice lesson tapes and opera sheet music at the age of 7. And soon she began working with a vocal coach. In her teens, Nika Danilova started to experiment in a more rock-oriented format by naming her alter ego after Jesus Christ and the French writer Émile Zola. She said she consciously wanted to alienate peers and peer alienation process, but it was really Jesus Christ and Émile Zola where Zola Jesus' name came through. In 2009, while still studying at the University of Wisconsin, Zola Jesus recorded in her apartment and released her debut full-length album, The Spoils. She has released many albums. The album Stridulum in 2010 described as her most melodic work to date, inspired by the Giulio Paradisi 1979 film at the same name. It marked a huge leap forward in terms of fidelity and accessibility. She has done many albums, many singing tours in Europe, tours, festivals, and right now she's in a transition to create and compose new music for all of the people that enjoy this healing power of the musical and harmonic notes. Zola has played with former Ghost and toured in support of Fever Ray and the XX. She has a Patreon page that you can follow and contribute and support, and also receive her new singing and songs. And we're so excited to have Nika today with us. Hope you enjoy.
You are listening now to the Spirituality Now podcast, the show that is solely focused on practical spirituality, leadership, and mindset skills with the aim and purpose of supporting you master your life. Welcome to the Spirituality Now podcast.
Welcome to the Spirituality Now podcast. And I have my guest here that you heard the pre-recorded intro by now. And I am very honored to have her here. Let me tell you why. Number one, because I followed her before knowing her. And it sounds like a cliche right now in these days of social media and all of these ways that we are connecting, right? We're surrendering to the fate of evolution, to the fate of social media and all of these AI and all of this technology. We're surrendering. But one of the good things about it is the people you get to meet, the people you get to enjoy their creations. And my guest today is one of them. I began to follow more of her trajectory when she was touring through Europe, and you'll correct me, sweetheart. And she was playing her piano in incredible places and churches, and just it awoke in me this sanctuary of sacredness and sanctity of the music in the cathedral inside. And I was very impressed that, not only she's really young, at least in the physical body, at least in this incarnational representation of herself, but you can hear the soul through her music. So I don't have much to say. First, I want to introduce you to her beloved Nika Zola. I don't know how to call you. Should we address you?
You can call me Nika. People call me either, but it's my name. Yeah.
All right, yes. Because as soon as I tell someone I'm going to interview Nika, who's Nika? I mean, Zola Jesus. Zola. I'm like, okay. So, but welcome,
It's very
sweetheart.
confusing for me too.
Oh, well, that should be very human. Actually,
Yeah.
that's a truthful statement to start this podcast with. But thank you so much for your time. I know you are pretty easy, and also you live in the forest, yes?
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
And how's the weather right now? I know this is a cliche question, but I know there's a lot of snow. I saw your latest video with your beautiful dog running free, in the snow and the woods.
That was just right off my house. I live on 150 acres of woods. And it's beautiful. It just finally snowed. It wasn't snowing all December, and then finally the snow came, which is what I look forward to every year. And it's cold. It's very cold out there, but it's cozy inside, so I kind of like it. But it's really beautiful out.
Yeah, and it's beautiful, and it's you bring to us a little bit of the forest with you. There's an always like an energetic kind of transmission from people, and again, I'm very grateful that you are here, mentoring into this platform. Where we are. We're a podcast that has evolved. We started being a bilingual podcast 4 years ago called Sovereign Futures, English and Spanish. So it was a lot for people hearing me speak English, hearing me speak Spanish, translating everyone. Then it evolved into Spirituality Now, by suggestion of you have a team and the teams evolve. You outgrow teams or the teams outgrow you. And by suggestion, it was called Spirituality, and then Spirituality Now. And it has evolved into something that we are here to celebrate or to understand or just to figure out unity in diversity. What is that topic about? We went from leadership and mindset to very, very overachiever kind of vibe to now settling in, right? And I want to tell you something. One of the main reasons of the transition of this podcast is meeting your teacher, Maid Oroshi. That was impactful. So let me begin with you, sweetie. What was in your childhood? What was your first introduction to music? When was it that Nika woke up, or maybe you already came to life with that, to the awareness of the power that music had not only in your life but into others' lives too?
It's strange because it's something that kind of found me. Like, ever since I was very young, I even remember my mom saying, "You were singing before you were speaking," and she would call me Tweets as a baby because I would just tweet and I would just ba ba ba. I would just sing all the time. And as a child growing up, it was a way to entertain myself because I lived out here in the woods. I lived in the same land where I live now. And I didn't have many friends, and we lived so isolated that it was easier to entertain myself than find others. So I would just walk around outside and make up songs and stories. And I was living in like a little musical. And then from a young age, when I was about 7, I begged my mom for voice lessons. And so there was actually one of our closest neighbors was a voice teacher, an opera. She was an opera singer. And that's kind of how my formal study began, albeit I was very small, so it wasn't that advanced. But I've been with her basically ever since, and that's when my love of opera really sprouted. And then by the time I was 18, 19, I decided to make music on my own instead of singing opera. And that there's a whole kind of narrative that arrived me to Zola Jesus. But music has always been in my life. And so it's really no surprise that I got here. But it didn't come from the outside. It came from within, which is kind of strange how that can happen,
You are when I hear you speak, and probably many people have said that about your music, I hear the same tones, the same in between your words. There's this transmission, and one of the things that impressed me most when I was reading a little bit about you, which no matter if people send us a bio of 10,000 words or we find it online or everything, it's just a little bit of the person, of the human, of the of the Buddhaic nature that everyone has. But something that impressed me, and I want to talk about it, is that in your teens, when you were a teenager, you started to experiment in a more rock orientated format, and now it makes sense that you work from opera and that something happened. But this is what caught my attention: that you name your alter ego after Jesus Christ and the French writer Émile Zola. I mean, that was my first writer that I really was impressed by. And so when I read that, I was like, oh, wow, Émile Zola and Jesus Christ. Tell me a little bit about that, because that's a very, very deep, actually.
It was deeper than I realized when I first came up with it, because I was 14 and I had just gone to a bookstore in Minneapolis, which was the closest big city, and I found Nana by Emile Zola, and I picked it up and I read it, and I was like, wow, this is incredible. It was a whole new world, and I was a student of French at the time, so it was just fascinating to me. And then at 14, I came up with this name, Zola Jesus, and I was entering into high school, so I was entering into a new school. And I basically told everybody to call me Zola Jesus, which alienated me pretty quickly from my peers. But but then when I started making music, it was just this natural thing where I had this name already that kind of was just this goofy thing. But decided this is what my music will be called, because I didn't want to name it after myself. And then in hindsight, the Zola and the Jesus together, I thought were interesting, because Zola is this rationalist, this realist, a truth seeker. And then to me, Jesus, well, he's, I'm not Christian, as you know, I'm not Christian, but he's spiritual, but he's also a historical truth seeker. And so it's really interesting how you can play it to either be like this, the yin yang, or, two sides of the same, coin, of like finding meaning and truth. And who knows why it's stuck. So here we are many years later.
This is really powerful. I love that you just shared this. I love that you just shared about Jesus, because, in 2019, I was at a Buddhist monastery with my teacher, Master Chaya, at a Theravada Buddhist monastery on a silence training. And one of the monks says, do you want to go get baptized and see what Jesus was all about? I was like, of course I will. I'm going with a monk in a silence retreat. And I had a really profound experience. Did not become a labeled Christian per se, but I'm a total devotee of the leadership, of the humanity, of the elevation of a truth seeker. I love how you named it, but someone that did practice. If story tells us right, but what my heart tells me is like, I admire that leadership. I admire that ability to train himself into enlightenment, or into a compassionate representation of what serving humanity truly is. So I love what you're sharing right now. And I love what you shared, that it began to alienating you from peers. I believe, and let's talk about that alienation, because I believe that to be able to master a skill, right, a craft, to differentiate yourself from the echoes of the parrots, the parroting of the social media world, the parroting world, everyone do the same. Let's belong by being the same instead of our own individual Godhead realization or God consciousness. I believe that it's important, that aloneness. And so, how was that alienation for you as a teenager, and how did that impacted the creation of your music, which you did? Your first album was The Spoils, correct?
Yeah. Yep.
So,
in like
what was the
2009.
influence? Yeah, what was the influence of that aloneness, that sacred space, that feels sometimes very lonely, right? But that loneliness brings us to this aloneness of creation. So how was that for you, sweetie?
Well, even before I kind of alienated myself through the name, I felt very alien from my peers and friends. And I think it's just something you're born with. Sometimes I think some people are just born feeling like they don't fit in, and whatever that means, I think we can all understand. If we're listening to this, it's probably what brought us to spirituality in the first place. Because I ended up spending more time on my own, and I was more interested in contemplation and reflection, self-analysis, and I just didn't require the constant. I still don't require the constant stimulation that I feel like others may. So, growing up, I did feel like an outcast. I felt alienated, and I think making people call me Zola Jesus was my way of controlling that feeling, where it's like, okay, I feel like I don't fit in, so I'm going to basically provoke everyone around me to realize that, so I can control the narrative in a way. But I was still quite popular, and I was popular as I was like the school therapist. Random people from all sort of groups would come to me, and I had an office because I worked at the newspaper and I was the editor of the newspaper. And so people would come into my office as like a 15, 16-year-old with their relationship issues, their friend issues. And I was kind of the problem solver and the mediator. And so that was my role, but I always was outside of all the groups. And even living in the woods here now, I feel like that, where I'm a part of the world. I'm not of the world, in the same way, but I feel like I have a role in the world. And that's why I do really, I'm really drawn to like healers and shamans, because I identify with that feeling of providing something to a community, but not really feeling like I was ever part of the community. Anyway,
Wow.
So music was my outlet.
This is deep. That's very deep, for you. I don't know. And for me, I'm like 52-year-old woman here, and and a 14-year-old and 15-year-old is awareness. And I think the gift of aloneness, the gift of being born as what people call weird. And I love that you said also the realization of your alter ego. I have a teacher of mindset that I studied with him many years. He was the mentor of Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, and he had a very interesting perception and conception about the alter ego. He said, which is the alter ego of Superman? And we'll all will buy, like, Superman. He said, no, the alter ego is Clark Kent. The real self is Superman. And so when I read that of you, I was like, this woman is Zola, Jesus, and Nika, all of it.
Yeah.
In what, it's a power of, emerging from the shadows of the self and the darkness that aloneness and alienation provides when we face it, when we go deep within. There's some wisdom that helps us emerge, especially with you, that you are so contemplative. When I met you at Korinji Monastery, first of all, did you see? I reacted like a total fan. I was like, "Oh my gosh!"
Well, it was the strangest place. I mean, I guess but who would expect?
I could not believe it, because I had just started following your music and feeling deep, meditative, the strange feelings in my body with that. And I know so many people that are this and that. I never had a reaction of like so much joy, because I'm like, I'm meeting here at a monastery with, I believe he's the best Zen teacher in the world, but I don't think he'll like if I even say that, But I was so surprised that in Wisconsin I couldn't believe it. And you were changing your clothes, and I'm like totally invading your space. So thank you for being in the podcast. Like having a compassionate heart. But again, I find it really, really, I feel that your creative process, and we're about to talk about music, because music, it's truly it's a very powerful way that you convey to the world. But to find someone like you gives permission to the few or the lots out there that feel weird and alienated to emerge like the lotus flower from the mud and contribute to a world that requires contribution and requires also detachment from it at the same place, which I really pay tribute to you that you've been able to find a way to navigate these waters of existence in such a beautiful way, Lord.
Thank you. That means a lot, an immense amount. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It has taken me 52 years to realize, like, not that, not that. And then comes Nika here. I'm like, yes, that, right? Anyway, so let's go to the depths of music. So you were helping people and you were called. I love that you said that it found you. You know, I love when people say the missions found me. There's no explanation, no logical explanation, but you truly flow with that. It's kind of like diving yourself into the Heart Sutra, like taken to the other shore, but you are like not even doing anything, right? You're being taken into these that your soul knows, the musical note it wants to play. So, how did music save you when the times were challenging for you? And how did music, I know it's two questions, but because I have a feeling that the music, in the depths of darkness or the depths of sorrows, began to bring you forward with these pains, with these sorrows, in a way that was creative to bring it to others. How did it save you, and how does it emerges from you, Nika, as a Zola Jesus composition? I hope that I'm clear, because it's a deep question.
Yeah, it really, I mean, as I think about the answer, it really is, because for me, music is it's a way to bring voice to all the things that I feel that have no words. And that's why words sometimes for me are deeply secondary or tertiary in writing music. When I need music, like I need music for myself as much as maybe someone would need to listen to the song to heal. Like, because for me, when I'm in my darkest moments, I just let out a howl. It's not a scream. It's operatic. I just let out my voice, and there's something so deeply cathartic about that for me. Or I'll go to the piano and I'll just let out everything, all my feeling, into the piano or into the voice. And so it's a way for me to channel these things that I am feeling or experiencing. Maybe I understand them, maybe I don't, and if I don't understand them, materializing them, pulling them out of me, helps to define them and to let them go. And so it can end up, for me, it's my own tool for emotional regulation and for analysis and for moving through feelings, because feelings are like waves, and I've learned that the hard way. I have many feelings, and sometimes I'm like, okay, I need to move through it. It helps me move to the other side of complicated feeling. And then when it comes to writing and composing, that is wrapped up in its own self-doubt, criticism. There's so much there that's very difficult for me. But I think at the end of the day, I do, what's the word? I do approximate what I'm trying to communicate to other people. So music plays two different roles for me. I mean, there's what you hear on the record, and then there's what nobody hears that I do when I'm home alone. That's for only me. So
The Home Alone. This is so deep, because one of the things that I was preparing myself for this inner and outer view of you, right? Instead of interview, it's inner and outer. With that, what you just said about the music, what people hear and what we don't hear. But about that, when I listen, I'm 52 years old, and when I listen to your music, Nika, is deep. I can hear the notes that you are not playing, because I'm going into the either the pain or the joy or the transcendence or one of the things that I have experienced with your music, and I don't know if that's one of your intentions, but it's what you just said. I experience regulation of my nervous system. I don't know if you're focused on the nervous system or not, but I experience like, whoa, it's like like a whole journey, like going on an adventure and then settling in and then bringing back myself to center in many of your, especially your last album that I have my favorites, songs that I actually, one of your songs, we're using it for one of the stories. You'll see it because we'll tag you on that. But when this is happening for you, the process of creation of music and you're being taken, do you experience like a beginning, like what I just said, like you're entering in this stage, like a rage, a madness, an elation, a joy, a beauty, a beautification, and a spirit, like very Rumi-esque, right? That Rumi was such an ecstatic. That's what I wanted to say. That you remind me of the ecstatics, Ananda Moima, Rumi, Sham de Tabriz, like this, that they were so open and that the music was through them. Do you experience a down after it? Because I know that people that are really, let's use the cliche word of success, or that accomplish a lot of things or are very high, then they have a low, and then that's where the music begins again. How do you experience the process?
Oh man, melancholy is my best friend.
Oh, wow.
I've made, that's the thing. I ended up having to befriend melancholy because it's not going away. And and I'm saying it goes away, but it's part of the process. And I've always thought that in order to experience high highs, you have to experience the opposite, which is the low lows. And, I have several friends that have struggled with deep depression. I myself have struggled with deep depression, but through the wisdom of understanding that you can't experience that ecstatic joy without understanding how far you can fall, like that there's that as above, so below. And so, it's at this point at, almost 35 years old of experiencing this high and low wave. I mean, it's not so much that it's unstable, it's consistent to the extent where now I expect it. I go, okay, here we go. But when I'm in that melancholy is when I have so much awareness and I'm able to see things, maybe not clearly, but at least with a gravitas that I can bring up to the highs. And in terms of my music career, the highs and lows as a professional musician are just so crazy. To be on stage and performing for thousands of people or however many, or just even embodying that rush of just me and the piano, like on my most recent tour when I was doing a solo piano tour, and then coming off stage to an empty green room and sitting after releasing so much energy. It's a really crazy experience. And now I understand why so many musicians either die early or struggle with addiction, have depression. It's a really hard thing to experience day in and day out and for long term. It's,
Wow.
yeah, it's not for everyone.
I was feeling sad. I began to feel a little bit of the waves because I began to, you talking about music the way you do, I was thinking of all the musicians before us, after you, the future generation of music, those that you have a powerful staff to carry, and it's a lot of responsibility to carry the staff of music. It's because music saves us, propels us, stagnate us, move us forward or move us sometimes backwards, which I really feel, and to the risk of being judgmental, which I don't have an issue with. Hence, I have teachers to slap me and say, you're being judgmental, right? But I believe that much of the music that is today, that is catered to the social media likes instead of the lives of people, it can have a backward effect that, again, we're all going to, there is no way that we cannot awaken if and when, we surrender into that. I love what you said. The highest of joy, you cannot have it without the lowest of your peaks, right? Without knowing how low you can go. But I feel that musicians and artists, creators, creatrix, poets, because you're such a poet. I mean, your language. I'm going to confess, with you and Roshi, I've been studying like more fancy words to say, more eloquent words to say, because dang, you and Mado talk like just so profound and so very eloquent your wording, and here in
I don't
Mexican
think so.
English,
I don't think so.
you know. Well, for me, it's very poetic to listen to, especially the word, for example, melancholy. But I feel you have a very deep, and maybe this is a lot of pressure, but a deep responsibility to not quit on the journey, to not quit on the gift of music, to not quit on the creation and propelling and still going through and finding the way to the ears and the hearts of others to receive this incredible healing that music is. So, what are the challenges, beloved Nika, that musicians, creators that really care, that really understand the power that music beholds for our humanity are having right now with all of this TikTok madness, social media madness, and that again, it has its good things. I mean, social media has become social media. That's how I met you and Roshi. It's so I have no complaints about it, but it's too in a billions of people, right? So, what are the challenges that you all are facing, Nika? And after that, what is the support that humans like us on the other side, where we are grateful to receive gifts like yours? What is the challenge, and then what is the support, like human like myself, right, can give to some of you to keep this music going?
That's a really loaded question. Because and I've talked to my friends and musician friends about this even just today, yesterday. It's been a topic of conversation quite a bit these days, because it is getting harder and harder to rely on the structures of the music industry to support the musicians within it. And this is for many reasons. I don't need to get into all of them, but I think with social media and with the way that the internet is now being kind of bought up by corporate entities, like for instance, the website that was I give credit to kind of like breaking my career just was bought up by Condé Nast. It's called Pitchfork. It was bought up by Condé Nast like 5 or 6 years ago, and now yesterday they just announced that they're closing down the website. And that was a website that gave a lot of exposure to musicians, 10, 15 years ago. And that's just indicative of what's happening to the industry. It's getting bought up. Like during the pandemic, venues and booking agencies were all bought up by a monopoly, Live Nation. And now it's much harder to book tours. It's harder to play shows. So everything is getting consolidated by major companies and monopolized, to the extent where the idea of being an independent musician is technically easier, but also harder than before, because the real world structures that were in place to support independent music are now getting bought up by, corporations, which are not independent. And so that's really hard. And then the pressures of social media are extremely ego driven. And that's something that I really struggle with. There's constantly this pressure to do things a certain way, to fit in, to conform to trends, to do little dances, to do like a little dance monkey dance type thing. And also the ageism and the just really insane beauty standards pressed upon especially women on social media and in the industry make it really hard to get attention unless you're attractive, young, skinny, white. And so there's just really, really it's a really, really toxic landscape for art and spiritual art to thrive. And this is actually what brought me to to Buddhism was because I was at this crossroads with my career with my music, where I felt like I started making music because of a deep spiritual need, that catharsis and that feeling of engaging with the divine, and through opera, it's very much like that. It's a very divine art form. And then as I got into the indie music world and kind of the rock music and pop, it all became a hungry ghost realm, darkness, bleak, obsession with appearance, with the ego. Everything was about the ego and feeding the ego. And you were actually de-incentivized if you made art that did not engage with the ego. And everything had to be consumer-based, capitalist. Like it just is it's so antithetical to what I value in great art. And I felt like I was at a crossroads where I didn't know how to make music without having to capitulate, without having to, water down what I was doing. So, but what I did is I started a Patreon, so I could get support from fans instead of relying on putting my music in advertisements, instead of trying to scale up everything I was doing, because that's another problem. You can only really make money doing this if you scale up. So it's like a 1% type thing. And I love music too much to let myself give up on it. So I've tried to find everything that I can to not only create the world that I want to see for my music to live in, but to put so much more spiritual energy and engagement in what I do, because I know people need it more than ever. If we're this starved of, I say spirituality, which is shorthand for just real soul-based life, and it's what we're doing and it's what we're talking about here, so I know it exists. I know there's people here, there are the others, and finding Karinji and finding a community that has different priorities has been so healing for me, because I'm able to kind of be who I am without feeling like I need to be this avatar for corporate media like I did earlier on in my career. And so now my main goal as a musician is to transmit all of the things that I think people are missing out on because of these value structures, to transmit the divine, to transmit soul-based life, like something bigger and deeper, and something that goes way, way, way underground. I can't explain it. I can't really explain it, but all I know is that I just can't go back to living that really small, fear-based life, trying to appease, like magazines, which don't exist, appease media. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I can relate. I can relate to every single thing you said. It's especially in the world and the people that I know, that it's interesting because you said, oh my God, you are dropping, like, I have my notebook. I want to share everyone here, those of you who are watching on YouTube, because the wisdom bombs that are being dropped, I gotta catch them, to feel them. But I love that you said engaging with the divine. I think that we are in a very new traumatic time for humanity. So what I'm saying is that, and this is not something new. We go back in eons in time and the ages. There's always a wave of trauma. Right now with the wars, Pakistan, Israel, Gaza, and don't start me with that, because I'm very much into the same line of thought as you are in that area. But there's new trauma created that the nervous system of humanity, or the nervous system of some of us, not all of us, we have the tools of the past for the trauma of the past. But right now is that engagement with the divine, is that realness. That's why I'm so pulled into Karinji right now. I'm like, oh, what you said, the gravitas of that is very painfully good.
Yeah.
But it's a need of that nervous system to slow down so we can, that fragmentation that is occurring at a collective level in a family systems all over the world. Because what happens to one family really happens to all. If someone is not safe, that I envision a world where people have water, shelter. I was talking about that with a friend. Water, shelter, the ability to use their time to be with the ones they love, and do their practices and just be a kind human. The water, food, shelter, and safety. And right now it's not available. It's viewable that we're very fortunate to in a way enjoy that or just treasure that, and we have a responsibility to cultivate that more. But you saying and engaging with the divine, I really feel and through music, that's your delivery, right? Your music, the frequency of it, the potency of it, with so much honesty. Honestly, Nika, very raw. I think that's one of the medicines, if I can say that word, medicine, energetic medicine for the world nowadays, and it's going to be more. Because what is happening right now is it lingers and creates an effect, right? It creates a tone, and your tones, your music, your frequency. If your music was from the future, a future healing that is coming as a wave in my here and now today, when I move forward with all my past, with all my trauma, and I meet you in that frequency, the wave sounds, right? And we create a symphony, and that symphony could be healing, could be awakening, could be suddenly having a revelation. I'm not alone. I'm one with God. I'm having this Jesus moment, this made up moment, right? This clarity moment. And I really love what you're sharing. So let's talk about, we have a couple of more minutes goes more. So, thank you for sharing. We're going to make sure to share your Patreon where people can find, especially Patreon, because I'm there and I know, I don't know if you are releasing your podcast or not, but I'm there. I'm voting. I'm trying to be
Good.
motivated.
Yeah, I'm working on it.
So we'll talk about that. We'll share that. You don't have to even share it. My goal on this podcast, and I have a nonprofit for many years called Mastery Life, has been that the teachers, that the musicians, that the artists. You know how some people create philanthropies to help the poor? Well, I wanted to help the people that help the poor. All of my life since I was little. So my podcast is really focused. That's why we don't advertise anything. That's why, people offer us sponsorships. And I'm like, although temptation is always there, right? Like, well, maybe with that we can do that. I can't. Just like you cannot quit on the music because and go in another way because it's contradictory to your values. So our podcast is like that. If we can help you, like Corinji, anyone that comes in the podcast, for us to facilitate that conversation of where to find you and everything without you having to do that. So it's not a transactional kind of thing. It's not like I'm consumerism attraction. We don't want that. So I really appreciate what you are bringing today. So now, with that said, let's talk about your music. Let's talk about what you are creating right now, what you are going into in this year, with all of these waves, these storms that humanity is facing. What is the new music? What are the new projects that you have? If you can, whatever you can share, of course.
Yeah. Well, I'm actually in a. I feel as though I'm in a transition creatively, which I'm still feeling out quite a bit. Whereas for the past 15 years, I've been releasing music that's, pop rock kind of. I was playing rock clubs and festivals and things like that. But at this point in my life, I'm really needing to explore other aspects of my creative interests musically. And what that means is that I'm working on an opera and more orchestral works, classical, just moving towards something a little bit more divine, I guess I will say. Something that can engage with my my philosophies in my emotional landscape that isn't tethered to things that are tied to this corporate world. And so I'm in a process of deconditioning myself in my writing process, because I sit down to make music and I write pop melodies, but I'm hearing and knowing that there's so much more inside that needs to emerge that can't be put into a 3-minute long, pop song. So that's where I'm at. I'm basically, trying to rewire myself and create things that are, I don't want to say they're for a different audience, because I think my audience will benefit from all of this, but it won't sound the same. It won't have the same references, and I've just outgrown that mode of working. Like opera singing has been something I've been taking very seriously again the past 8 years. And my voice is now at a point where I'm ready to use it in that capacity, but I can't put that voice in the music that I used to make. They're too discordant. So I need to change the way that my music is even, formed. So whatever, that's a long-winded way of saying I'm currently writing music, but it's a whole new style and a whole new mode of working that I've never done before. So it's going to take me some time, but I'm also recording a piano EP. I'm going to New York next month to do that, and I might be doing another solo piano tour in Europe in the fall. So these are things that are tentatively being planned. And I'm just trying to move towards things that are more raw. I like acoustic instruments. That's why I like the piano. That's why I like the voice, especially with things like artificial intelligence and the oversaturation of electronic music. It's no longer an interesting palette for me because it doesn't feel real. It feels very manipulated, very synthesized. So I'm much more interested in working with traditional instruments and to try to bring things out that, when people go see a live, they're knowing that they're seeing people that are dedicated to their instrument. I'm dedicated to my instrument, and I don't use auto-tune. I don't try to, So anyway, I digress, but that's kind of where I'm at right now. Long story short.
I love it. I love it. Again, this is, it's because when we outgrow our old self, or the self that no longer exists, right? That we transitioned, or hopefully we polished, and we begin to aim our soul more into its own soul purpose. And I love, you are so aimed to the divine. Anything, whatever you're saying, I'm like, she's singing to the divine. She's singing through the divine. She's singing as the divine. Like, she's composing for the divine. Yeah, right. It just doesn't fit. It's like if I try to fit into my clothes pre-pregnancy, it's an illusion for me, right? If I try to fit into my shoes when I was 5 years old, it's an illusion. That's the process of evolution, especially spiritually, internally, and the more aligned we are with our values. Which what you're saying, Nika, if I may, it sounds the polishing, like like the pearl, how it gets polished, right? Of all of the dirt and all of that. When you polish a core value, what you get is the pearl of virtue. And for me, when you are speaking, that's where it's taking me, like the virtues of the divine, the virtues of music, the virtues of, that's why I think that they used to call the musicians. And I know this because I have an uncle, Nika, that I may introduce you once. He is the main pianist, maestro, they called him, teacher of Bellas Artes. So he used to play for the Kremlin in Russia. His name is Manuel de la Flor. So he's very well-known pianist. So he's very Rachmaninoff, all of that. But he has always said, I will never use any acoustic or anything because I'm not playing for the modern times. I'm playing for the transcendent ones. it really blew my mind. While he was playing Rachmaninoff, he was telling all these stories because they go, Maestro, could you record this? And can we do this pop thing? Can we? I'm not playing for the modern times. I'm playing for the transcendent times. So now, he told me this like 15 years ago. Until today, you speaking, it makes sense to me. So, uh, so Nika, anything else that you would like to share with us about I know we spoke about that we were going to speak about the healing power of music, but I think, times move on, and anything that you would like to share with our audience, I want to share with you. Most of our podcasts are received in Latin America by English-speaking people, and now with all the softwares and everything, people figure out and they translate, and we're moving into hopefully translation. But I'm shying away from technology a little bit to what would be blessing. I want you to go back in that office, but not being the 15-year-old in the office where people were getting at your advice, but with that innate wisdom that you have carried and that has matured. We're going to go into the office of Nika right now. And we're going to ask her what would be a blessing or a wish or something that you could leave the community regarding music, regarding the divine within the music of their soul.
So advice for those listening about music?
Yes, or a blessing, about
blessing,
whatever you want. Like, what would be a blessing that you would like to leave the audience with?
Well, I'll just say that, first I'll say everybody can make music. So I think music is a mystical experience. And because it does allow you to connect with the divine, it does allow you that mystical connection to something so much greater than yourself. So I would hope that if people are listening to this and they're fans of music, or they're not fans of music, or they play music or they don't play music, to just go and singing is the easiest thing you can do, because that's why I liked it. It was the instrument I was born with. There's something so deeply, deeply cathartic and profoundly grounding about singing. I mean, that's why we chant in Buddhism. That's why, they chant in Judaism and all of these things. It's a healing modality. So I think humming, anything, just music is something we can all share by listening, but also by creating. And so there's just nothing more powerful than, turning off a podcast and going to howl in the shower. I think that's, and that is definitely a way towards healing oneself and healing the world. It's harmonic. These harmonic frequencies are extremely medicinal. There's been so much writing about that, about particularly important frequencies. And that's why I love music, because it is a healing modality. And I do feel like that's what the world needs. And that's what I need, definitely. So, just get off the podcast and listen to some music that you love.
So get off my podcast right now, everyone.
Get off, go right, leave it right now.
Go away. Thank you, Nika. Thank you so much. We're gonna put, you can tell us which music links we can put, and we're gonna put all of the links from you for our audience. Our audience is pretty organic, and the Latin American family has been with us like for years. Very loyal community. Really, really beautiful soul. So thank you for those of you who listen. A really quick shout out to one person that listens to all of our podcasts, like one person that gives me feedback of every single one. Thank you, Alex Sluke, an extraordinary author and writer. A quick shout out. But thank you, Nika, for your time and for bringing the woods and this internal aspect of the divine outside for us to share with others. And we're really blessed to have your music, and we'll make sure to share it. Thank you so much, love.
Thank you. It was such an honor.
We hope you enjoyed this new episode, and if you did, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere where you prefer to listen to your podcast. Make sure to check the links to everything we mentioned in this episode. For more news, future or past episodes, or for any other inquiry, please visit our website at delaflorteachings.com. Once again, thank you for listening to the Spirituality Now podcast.